Yeah, I'm Dr. Mimi Syed. I'm a board certified emergency medicine physician. I'm here at 𝐓𝐡𝐞 Hospital. I'm here on my second mission trip in Gaza. I was here in August at Nasser Hospital. I'm here working in the emergency department, mostly with trauma and acute cases.
And I know today we're speaking on Thursday, December 26th, and I know earlier today a friend of yours was killed. He was a journalist. His name was Ayman al-Badi. He was Ayman al-Gadi from Al-Quds Today. He was one of 5 journalists who were burned alive in their van. And as I mentioned in the news, Ayman's wife was in labor at the time at Al-Aqsa Hospital, where you are. Can you talk a little bit about Ayman and his wife and I don't even I don't know how to even ask the question, but how is she?
She was at Al Auda actually, and that's where he was. He actually met with me yesterday and came to tell me, he's going to meet with me on Saturday. He wanted to kind of know the situation in the hospital. And he's just so pleasant, but he was so happy because his wife was in labor. So he actually proceeded to the hospital and messaged me last night, saying I congratulated him for the new arrival. And when I woke up this morning, I got news that he was killed in an airstrike to the car that he was in. It sounds like we just today, later today, she actually gave birth, and I'm not sure exactly how she's doing. But the funeral was this morning as well.
I can't even begin to imagine. And can you just talk about, I mean, before we get into the situation inside the hospitals, can you talk a little bit about the kind of humanitarian situation inside central Gaza right now? It's been just an unspeakably horrific week in central Gaza, attacks and shelling. And, of course, there was a strike on Al-Mawasi. Yet again, people incinerated in their tents. Can you talk about the general situation in central Gaza where you are?
Yeah, it's absolutely horrible. It's very difficult to even describe how much is lacking here in Gaza. It's from the very basic needs that a person has to keep their dignity and their health and safety. Um, Children. I mean, children are disproportionately affected by this. There were 3 newborns that this week that have died of hypothermia in tents in the Lassi area. It's freezing cold, especially for a newborn who requires more heat to maintain their temperatures. It's just so unnecessary and preventable. It's just such a crime to see these things happening. No, and that's just the tip of the iceberg. There is just so much happening and so much lacking right now. Things that are completely avoidable. For example, I was working in the pediatric emergency department. There's a 9-month-old baby that has been having diarrhea regularly for the last several weeks. He keeps coming in, getting IV fluids, and then sent back to the tents because there's no other option at this point. Goes back and consumes the dirty, contaminated water from E. coli, and then gets repoisoned and is coming back again. Is now having complete organ failure, septic shock, and is going to die because there is essentially there is no way to provide the care that's needed because it starts with just clean water. It's just such a basic human right. And this has been going on for quite some time. The UN has published many reports saying that there's high levels of contamination, and it's just gotten significantly worse in the last year. So.
And as a doctor, as someone who works in the emergency department, I mean, if an infant, for example, comes in to a Western hospital with E. coli poisoning and severe diarrhea, there are ways to treat and save this infant's life. Are the medications that are available, um, uh, at all accessible to anybody inside the hospitals?
Yeah, that's a really good point, right? The medications are one thing, but the fact that this child does not even have clean water, so you can treat them all you want, they're going to go back to the same living conditions and require that, and get inoculated again. But to your point, medications are completely lacking as well. There are only certain types of antibiotics, and most people here are completely resistant to those antibiotics for various reasons. So it definitely limits the amount of intervention that we can provide for any of the patients here. Our hands are basically tied. I mean, we can be here as warm-bodied trying to provide the medical care. We can only do so much, and it feels like such a futile effort sometimes.
Dr. Mimi Syed, can you talk about some of the patients that you've been treating in the hospital where you work in Central Gaza? What kind of injuries you're seeing? What it looks like after the kind of attack that we saw earlier today? For example, the targeting of a media van, for example, people burned alive in their tents in Al Mawasi, people, children shot in the head by snipers, Israeli snipers. Um, how, what are the kinds of common, frequent injuries that you're seeing and are able to treat?
Yeah, I mean, I want to point out first of all, there's this concept in the media that there are humanitarian zones in Gaza where people are supposedly safe. There is no such thing. When you talk to people here in Gaza, it's kind of like a running joke. There's no safe place in Gaza. Most civilians casualties that we're seeing, they're coming from the said safe zones, the green zones, and they're shrapnel injuries, explosive blast injuries. We're seeing many children. Almost always, there's like about 70% of them are children. Traumatic amputations, severe facial injuries that kids are cutting in with. And then that's just the injury, the physical, the military conflict part. Then there's the indirect, insults that we're seeing, the sequelae of all of that, which is the infection rates that are happening as a result of those shrapnel injuries if the patient did survive. And again, they're if they don't die with the injuries from the explosive injuries, they're going to die because of sepsis and infection shortly after that.
It's unbearable. And as well, your colleagues around hospitals in Gaza. I mean, the amount of attacks now, daily attacks on the Kamal Adwan Hospital in North Gaza, where Israel is reportedly using explosive robots to be detonated around the hospital building and the grounds itself, along with targeted assassinations of medical staff, your colleagues there by quadcopter drones. I mean, the most dystopian situation. And this is, of course, happening at a hospital, and this has been happening over the last 15 months in Gaza. Can you talk about, I know just this morning, Thursday morning, 5 medical staff at Kamal Adwan were killed by Israeli attacks, including paramedics and I believe a pediatrician. How are your colleagues in central Gaza? Uh, are they able to protect themselves at all? What is the protocol for you and your colleagues there, the Palestinian physicians that you work with, shoulder to shoulder? If the Israelis decide to, enact attacks on your hospital like the ones that they're doing at Kamal Adwan in the north.
Yeah, Nora, there's no sense of that. There's no real security, right? We all have this fake sense of security that we're here with an NGO and they can do the very best that they can. But at the end of the day, we know just a few months ago, Al-Aqsa was bombed right on the hospital grounds or burning tents. There were actually patients with IVs still attached. So when I was at Nasser in August, just right outside the hospital gates, there was a car struck and a car bomb. So really we have this false sense of security that we all know deep down that none of us are safe. We hear drones all the time. We hear airstrikes very close to us all the time. It's around the clock. So, and none of us get sleep. This is new. This sound is new to us, the drones, 24/7. But unfortunately for the locals here, this is a normal state of being, unfortunately. And yeah, there's no safety, and I think they all know that. We all know that. We're only here for 4 weeks. Unfortunately, we leave, and they're still here. So it's nothing compared to what they're feeling.
And Mimi, this is the second time that you've been working in Gaza this year. And can you talk a little bit about the differences that you've noticed, and kind of compare the conditions from earlier this year to what you're seeing right now around you?
Yeah, I mean, in August, we had mass casualties several times a day. There were many quadcopter injuries, sniper injuries. That was day in and day out. I'm at a different hospital now, and the setup is a little bit different, but I think we're seeing more of the things that were kind of implicit back then because everything was overtaken by the mass casualties that were coming in, but we're seeing the sequelae of all of it. And that's essentially the dehydration, the water contamination, sewage everywhere, children dying of diseases that are completely preventable and in fact, like not even existent. They're obsolete in other countries. And that's the most painful part of all of it is that it's so preventable. If aid were to be allowed in, if things weren't withheld, I spoke to infection control here that is supervising water contamination or water filtration, and then he said, we don't have chlorine. We don't have chlorine to kill all the contaminants. We don't have the membranes. The water is hypersalinated. It's coming from the sea, and there's no way to filter it. So I've myself witnessed and reported children, getting water, and they're just consuming it immediately. It's not meant to be consumed. And just imagine if you're drinking very salty water regularly, what that does to your body. And that's why we're seeing kids with kidney failure all the time.
Finally, as you prepare to go home and and hopefully are able to talk to your colleagues about what you've experienced and what you've witnessed your colleagues in Gaza having to treat and trying to mitigate in whatever capacity they can this absolute sadistic nature of this genocide. What are the who are the people that that you think about? What are the images? What are the stories that you will be coming back with? What keeps you up at night after this last trip?
Yeah, I mean, I always ask myself, what's my drive and what compels me to come back? And first and foremost, I'm a mother. I have three small children, and all of these children remind me of my own children. And how is it fair that my children get to be safe at home, healthy and happy, and these children have to suffer just because they were born in Gaza? To me, that just it just compels me to speak about it. It compels me to keep moving forward and fight. And as healthcare workers, I think we underestimate our role in society. We are protectors of humanity, and I think a lot of my colleagues think that we are subjected to just the walls of the hospital and clinics and treating patients. And I disagree. I think we have a larger responsibility to speak up for humanity, especially when it is being violated and at the brink of extinction. I mean, honestly, sometimes, one of my other colleagues has said something like this, is it feels like it's the end of humanity here. And it certainly does. When you hear on the ground, it feels like humanity has left. And it's not fair. It feels, as an American, this feels completely un-American to me. And this needs to change.
And in many ways, it is very American, right? It's the story of settler colonialism, of genocide, of imperialism, and of kind of unmitigated slaughter of indigenous people, and we're seeing it, live streamed on our phones and on our computers 24/7, and yeah, I'm so grateful for you spending this time with us today on the Electronic Intifada. Please be safe. We'd love to talk to you when you get back. And I know you'll have so much more to say. And please send our best regards to your colleagues at Al-Aqsa and at all the hospitals and the media workers there in Gaza. We are, again, just so grateful and so heartbroken and so full of rage and grief. And Dr. Mimi, you're the best of us. We thank you so much.
Thank you, Nora. Thank you for doing what you do. Talk to you soon.